Hello everybody! It's been a while since I've done a reaction video, and I figured because I actually have not seen this yet, it was the perfect time. I just realized I didn't change my light. Yeah, look at that. Got the red and blue. It's a fade. Anyways, we are here today to watch the official Superman movie teaser trailer. Enough dilly-dallying. It's already going to be interesting enough to edit this. Let's get into it. Because it's easier to do it this way than on my physical laptop, because my laptop doesn't like to play videos cleanly, especially when I'm screen recording. So it just doesn't work. But this works. Damn! Turn that down a bit. That was loud as hell. My goodness. Let me, turn, this off. Damn. Sorry, don't mind the little white bar. You probably couldn't have seen most of it. Wait a minute. Oh. Oh. There is a lot that's going to be going on here. Oh my gosh. A lot of guys are getting introduced now. Wow. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And because I need this video to be longer, because I've only been here for 7 minutes, there's a lot I probably didn't notice. So, I'm gonna have a look at Screen Crush's Superman trailer breakdown, because we're already here. May as well. Okay, I'm back. And let's get into this freaking thing.
Home. Baby, home.
Nice.
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and I'm trapped in the TV, but I don't know it, so please don't tell me. And this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the first trailer for James Gunn's Superman. Guys,
yeah, because there was a lot of different people in this that I've never seen.
Like, if you watch this channel a lot, you know that Superman is my favorite superhero. I have a picture of Christopher Reeve on my wall, and I think that James Gunn is creating something here that's very special. And is
well, damn, I know.
And new, and makes Superman the premier hero of our generation once again. So we are so excited.
I miss Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill was an amazing Superman. They defiled him.
With this new relaunch, and I want to let you guys know that we are relaunching our live show next year as a kind of Pee-wee's Playhouse for nerds. We are going to have special guests, exclusive breakdowns, puppets, and we're going to be in 8 cities in 2025: LA, Phoenix, Dallas, Houston, Philly, Charlotte, Atlanta, and Orlando. And at the end of this video, we have a special sneak peek of the new show. I'm so excited for you guys to see. A link for 20% off tickets is down below. Now, we got our first look at the movie earlier this week when Gunn unveiled the motion poster of David Cornsweet's Superman flying up 50 glorious seconds of the score. So that score is actually taking
Ah.
motifs from John Williams' classic Superman score, but kind of burying them. Almost like the Superman that we know and love is slowly emerging onto our screens once again. The poster also unveiled the new tagline, "Look Up." Now, obviously, this comes from the popular intro to the iconic Max Fleischer animated serials.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
But in a meta sense, I think that Gunn is telling us that his Superman will not only be more like that classic version, but that he is going to be a ray of hope. Like Zack Snyder's Superman was much more muted and understated. He was never really sure if he even wanted to be Superman. He was a person who was racked with self-doubt. Now, here on the channel, we have talked at length about how I think that version of Superman is interesting, but is ultimately not really Superman.
Wait a minute, I'm confused. This isn't Henry Cavill? We're getting a new Superman already?
You know, good point. So let me give you guys a quick rundown on why we're getting a new Superman and what this new DC universe actually is, because I will admit it does get a little confusing. So in 2013, Warner Brothers
Yeah, definitely.
Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan would start
DC and Marvel have been very confusing.
That would rival the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they gave it a confusing name. It was called the DC Extended Universe, and it kicked off with Man of Steel. Now, some fans, like myself, did not like the darker, muted color interpretation that Snyder created. In fact, I hated it. But the box office was solid, and Warner Brothers doubled down, asking Snyder to introduce as many heroes as possible in the sequel, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, so then they could start hyping a crossover movie, in fact, 2 crossover movies that would have been directed by Snyder. But there was pretty big fan backlash over BVS about the tone and the plot.
Martha!
So Warner Brothers did a hard pivot. They hired Joss Whedon to fun up the Justice League, which was, of course, a total disaster. The next few movies in this universe varied wildly in tone and story, and at one point, The Rock was even being given the keys to the kingdom when he tried to build the universe toward a fight between Black Adam and Henry Cavill's Superman.
It's been a while since anyone's made the world this nervous.
But like immediately after Henry Cavill returned, Warner Brothers placed James Gunn in charge of a new rebooted universe now simply called the DCU. So this new universe would keep some of the stories from the old DCEU, like Gunn's Suicide Squad film and in the show Peacemaker, while most of those stories, Shazam, Superman, Ben Affleck's Batman, Flash, all of that is jettisoned. Now, I do think that Henry Cavill
Wow.
would have been a great Superman.
Did Shazam, and out he goes.
But Gunn opted
That-
for a new Man of Steel in a more fantastical
Awesome.
universe. In this universe, superheroes have been around for a while. In fact, several heroes are already confirmed to appear in this movie, like Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, The Engineer, Supergirl, and Crypto.
Crypto? Like the fake money on the internet?
No, Crypto like Superman's dog.
Oh, I gotta see this movie.
Now, Superman is my favorite superhero.
Absolutely.
I relate to a boy who lives in a big city and wants to make the world a better place. But also, I think that we can all relate to Superman because he's a survivor of real trauma, the destruction of his homeworld, the deaths of his adopted parents. Now, luckily, he's able to work through his trauma by fighting supervillains, but for most of us, we have to find other ways to cope with our anxiety, depression, and stress. Like for years, I bottled up all of my social anxiety, especially after COVID, and I didn't deal with some really traumatic stuff from my past before I finally dealt with it through therapy, through BetterHelp, the sponsor of this. But I was also your anxiety in there, and you'll be there to help you if you have an organ. BetterHelp CU. The first was the excellent tear-jerking documentary Super/Man.
Sorry.
For Reed. And the second project is the excellent
Get your bag, my guy,
which we're
but
covering
no.
here on the channel. Now, this film today is going to truly launch the new live-action cinematic DCU. So the trailer opens with Superman crashing down to Earth. Now, a lot of people may not like that our first glimpse of this Superman is him being like in the snow, beaten and defeated. But personally, I love it. I think it's great to see a Superman who can actually get his ass kicked. The last few times we've seen Superman on screen, he's been this all-powerful, godlike being, but he's not always that way in the comics. Like when John Byrne reinvented him in the 80s, he was very fragile. He had to get haircuts. Also, one of the best versions of Superman ever is from the DC animated universe, which crossed over with Batman the Animated Series. And that version of Superman, when he fought a robot, the robot could actually knock him around a little bit. So I think a Superman who is not so powerful.
Yeah, because I think sure Superman is super strong. I like that Superman is super strong, but you cannot have an invincible superhero because that just isn't very fun because there's no challenge. But at the same time, if you have a really strong superhero like Superman, that's the issue with why they haven't done a game, because they think that it wouldn't be easy. But like, you don't really see for instance, I don't know. My brain is melting. I don't remember what I was even talking Because I've always wanted to see a Superman game. Because, like, you can just you just make it the power fantasy. And then after a while, make someone that's Superman really has a hard time fighting show up, and then get knocked down a peg, and then figure a way through it type of deal. You know? Like, you don't gotta completely make Superman impossible to make a game out of, because he's not invulnerable. But at the same time, like, some games you can easily just make into, like, this power fantasy. You can easily do that. And I don't know why they haven't done it yet, because people have been screaming at him to do it.
Now, the Fortress of Solitude, of course, is in the comics, but it's also in the, like the original Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, and of course, there was a version of it in the Snyderverse. And the Fortress of Solitude is important because it is a place where Superman can literally be alone in solitude. But that's because he is the only son of Krypton. By definition, he is alone at all times. So the Fortress of Solitude both looks like the barren landscape of Krypton, but it's also a place where he can truly just be himself. The last son of Krypton. He doesn't have to worry about people needing things from him. It's really the only place where he can just collect his thoughts and not hear the sounds of people being in distress all the time. But when we start off seeing Superman down and defeated like this, it's not just showing us that he can get beat up, it's showing us that he can get back up. And that's really important because Superman is supposed to be a beacon of hope. And he can't really be a beacon of hope for regular people if he never gets his ass kicked like regular people. Now, the way he lands is also very reminiscent of Superman's first crashing to Earth. And of course, when we see Superman's origin in films and cartoons, it always begins like this. After he's sent away from Krypton, he always crash lands to Earth. So, I think, in a symbolic way, this is James Gunn's way of saying that this is the start of the new DCU. Also notice, one of our editors, Randolph Navarro, pointed out that he is sitting and laying in the fetal position. In other words, it's like he's arriving on this new universe, this new Earth, as a baby, just like he did when he was an actual literal baby. Now, I gotta say how much I love the comic accurate costume. It's just got just enough movie additions to it, like with the shoulder pads and things, to make it look like not just tights, but also the trunks. Now, David Cornsweet and James Gunn actually went back and forth on whether or not to use the trunks on the suit. They ended up deciding that Superman is kind of like a pro wrestler, and the trunks will emphasize that for kids. Now, notice there is some padding in the suit, especially in the shoulder pads. Now, in the comics and in a lot of iterations of Superman, like the excellent show Superman and Lois, his suit is made by his mother. So we have this fun theory that maybe his mom made him this suit, and she gave him shoulder pads for just a little tiny bit of extra protection for her boy.
Cool costume.
Thanks. My mom made it for me.
Now, right here, we see David Cornsweet.
I love that scene.
He looks great. Like, the change in his hair actually makes him look different as Superman. And we see he's...
It really does, yeah.
Clark Kent, where he bumps into this guy. And he gets excited. Like, maybe this is his first day as an actual reporter at the Daily Planet. Now, notice the newspaper headline from the Daily Planet says, "Hammer something creates havoc." I don't want to get too far into speculation, but I think what we're seeing here is there definitely is some sort of supervillain attack in the city prior to this. Remember, we're coming into a Superman who's already been active in Metropolis, and James Gunn said that he's met all of the characters in the movie except for Lex Luthor. We're going to see their first confrontation in this film. Right here, Super Wounded Duck. Now, that is a bar in the DC Comics, and this is a comic-accurate Daily Planet. You know, some of the movies, especially the Snyder movies, strayed away from this, but in the Black Panther trailer, we actually saw this Daily Planet does have the giant globe on the roof. Like everything else in this movie, as we'll talk about in a bit, everything is designed to make it feel like you lifted it from the comic page. Now, the Superman...
It really does, though.
Like such
you know?
an Easter egg for Superman.
It looks so good.
This is the emblem that he wore in the comic book Kingdom Come. So I don't want to like spoil the entirety of Kingdom Come because you should definitely read it. But it was created by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. And it depicts a DC universe like decades in the future where basically there are too many superheroes, they've run amok, and Superman has kind of withdrawn from the world. So it's about him coming back to himself. It's like this older Superman who's a little bit more cynical. Now, the inclusion of that logo in this movie, I could speculate all day on what it means. It could just be an Easter egg, or there's some indications later on that the public is turning on Superman. So we could see him start to withdraw, and then maybe it takes people like Lois to pull him back to humanity. And this part really, if you've seen our reaction video, you've seen me cry about this. Superman does the supersonic whistle to call Krypto. Now, the font here is the same font used in the credits of Superman 1978, which, as many of you know, is my all-time favorite superhero movie. Now, this is a new score, but it takes the leitmotif from the John Williams theme. Now, I also just want to shout out a great video essay by the channel Sideways that is about superhero themes. Specifically, it talks about the theme to Superman and how that original theme was very much based in Americana. It was inspired by a typical American march and also the wonderful Fanfare for the Common Man by Aaron Copland. So I think what we're seeing here is a universe that is inspired by Superman 78, but not trying to be a continuation of it like Superman Returns was. Then we see Inside the Daily Planet. Now,
Which I actually have the DVD to that movie. Great movie.
And I don't necessarily mean adapted directly from the comics, but like I said earlier, he wants everything to seem like it was taken from the comics page. Here we see a couple of people who worked at the Daily Planet and GBS News in the comics. Pay close attention here. Clark almost runs into this guy, and he goes, "Hey, kid, what up?" That is actually Steve Lombard, the sports reporter, and the woman walking in front of him is Kat Grant. Now, Kat Grant was, like, briefly in the 80s, Clark actually became an on-air reporter for GBS News. It was very weird. And his co-anchor was Kat Grant, who we actually saw in the teaser trailer here. In the background, we do see the aforementioned GBS, or Galaxy Broadcast News, and we see a news ticker here that says widespread flood, large bodies of water. It's kind of hard to make out the rest of it. This is one of my favorite Easter eggs, and Lee Mazzio, one of our editors, caught this. Clark has a jar of peanut butter on his desk, which is a deep-cut Easter egg from the comic book Superman for All Seasons, when Clark had it on his desk in his room. And you guys know how much I love Superman, so me and the team were very excited to design this new Superman parody shirt for you. It says, "It's a bird, it's a plane, it's your mom." Very good. High five. Guys, we love designing these merch shirts for you, and we also are always dropping new shirts and having special deals and discounts. You can find links below, but also sign up for our newsletter so you... But in the late 1800s and early 20th century, that wasn't an option for people. You know, they needed the farm close by, but now we have cars, we have trucks. Your farm can be a little bit further back on your property or further down the road. Now, Pruitt Taylor Vance plays Pa Kent. I think what they might be doing here is a relationship that Pa Kent and Clark had in both the comic book Birthright and Superman for All Seasons. Essentially, in those comic books, Jonathan Kent, he's proud of his son, but he's worried when he becomes Superman. He doesn't want to lose him. Not only does he not want to lose him physically, but he's worried that Clark will leave behind the name Kent and actually just become this other person. We saw a little bit of this, and it's so perfectly adapted in Man of Steel, when Clark says to his dad, "Am I still your son?" And then John breaks up and says, "You are my son." Now, I think this could be why Clark is comforting his father here, but, you know, we also don't know, is Martha Kent still alive? Now, traditionally in comics and in Superman 78, Jonathan Kent usually dies first, which then teaches Clark the lesson that he can't save everybody, so he needs to save as many people as he can while he can. So it could be Martha Kent who dies early in this film.
Hey, Preston, can we get to my favorite part of the trailer?
What part's that?
You know, with the puppy.
Yes, Krypto the Super Dog. Oh, then we get to the part that really broke me up. Superman calls in Krypto with his supersonic whistle. Now, he runs in, so I'm not sure if this means that Krypto can fly or not. But James Gunn has said that Krypto and Superman have a complicated relationship in this movie.
There's still something very complicated between us, so...
Like they're just now starting out and Krypto isn't fully trained. Now, including Krypto here is very important to me personally.
Yeah, and to me too. Because he's a puppy, and I think we are underrepresented in this film.
Exactly. Now, Krypto the Super Dog.
Oh,
was a dog
absolutely,
from
because
Krypton,
I
survived and
love
came to Earth,
that.
and he was Superman's dog all throughout the Silver and Bronze Age of comics. But in 1986, John Byrne relaunched Superman in a series that he wrote and drew called Man of Steel. And he tried to make Superman much more grounded, which frankly he needed. Superman was getting way too powerful.
It's not fair.
Totally not fair.
But as part of that, he wanted to make it clear that Superman was the only survivor of Krypton. So Krypto was written out of the comics. And, you know, he stayed absent from the comics for a long time. He's recently returned. In fact, he's featured in a great Supergirl series that I highly recommend to you guys. The fact that Krypto's in this movie shows this is a very, very comic accurate film. They're not afraid to be silly and have super dogs. They're going all out, taking all of the best from the comics and putting it in this movie. And then he says,
Take me home.
now I think that is a very particular word choice, right? He is saying, okay, take me home. But I think he's actually saying, take me to the fans. Take me to a proper adaptation of Superman. In other words, James Gunn is looking to return Superman to America. At least that's my symbolic take. He could actually mean take him to the Fortress of Solitude or to his farm. Now, James Gunn did release a long list of comics that he's adapting for this film. And thank you, James Gunn, for doing that. We really appreciate it. One of those comic books is Superman Birthright by Mark Waid and Neil Francis Yu. Now, that comic book kind of retells the origin of Superman revealing himself to Earth for the first time. They did something new in it, though. Luthor then finds these images of Krypton, and he cherry picks from history, and then he feeds this info and images to the military and to the Daily Planet to make it look like Superman is an advanced scout who's like leading a Kryptonian invasion. Then he fakes a Kryptonian invasion of Metropolis, builds giant robots and things to make it look like Superman is culpable for this. Now, for this film, we do know that at one point from images that we've seen, that Clark is taken in by the government. So I think we could be seeing something similar here. I think there is going to be a big threat in this movie we'll talk about later that is genuine, but at the point when that threat arrives, everyone on Earth already believes that Superman might be a villain, or because he's an alien, that he's actually allied with this true threat. So we do see a monster here, right? We see it later in the trailer too, but right here, it like lands its claw down on the gas canisters. She doesn't hear, probably because she is hearing impaired, and Superman saves her. And my goodness, what a shot, man. This to me is everything about Superman. He is the shield that protects us from events that, you know, we can never protect ourselves from. I also want to point out how much she looks like a comic book character. Her dress and everything look like it's lifted straight from the comics from the 80s or earlier. Now, on the street,
Oh, absolutely, dude.
Metropolis Meteors. Now, this is the Metropolis baseball team from the comics, and we're also going to see them in the stadium a little bit later on. And
Oh, why am I whited?
Ross
Jesus.
Street, which could be named after Superman's boyhood friend Pete Ross, but more than likely, we think this is named after the great artist Alex Ross, who not only drew and conceived of Kingdom Come, but he is also one of the greatest Superman artists of all time. He's famous for making photorealistic art. It's painted. Trust me, the work of Alex Ross is seminal for Superman fans. He also created the Superman giant-sized comic book Superman Peace on Earth, which shows Superman on one day at Christmas trying to like help people all around the world. And then we see Nicholas Hoult as a comic-accurate Lex Luthor. Now, of course, you know Nicholas Hoult was in the X-Men movies where he played Beast. So now they get a chance to see him go the other way and be a more villainous person. Note here that his company is called Luthor Corps, and not Lex Corps. Now, that was the original company in Smallville, but years later, Lex
actually,
changed the family name to his own name.
yeah, that did actually confuse me.
Him having daddy issues mixed up in there, but we don't have to get into it in this video. Notice that somebody is on top of the Luthor Corps building. It's very small, but I'm willing to bet that's Superman. And then we see Luthor here looking very much like a Bond villain, like rotating this revolver. Maybe he was shooting Superman or Crypto to see if they were actually bulletproof. In that Birthright comic I talked about earlier, at first, Luthor very much thinks Superman is a charlatan who uses technology, and he could have been testing his powers here. Also notice he's got a pinky ring. So in the comics, those John Byrne comics I talked about earlier, Lex Luthor had a kryptonite ring, and this could be a version of that, even though we don't see a kryptonite gem on this, but they can scrub that out for the trailers. Now, we see here that Lex is in some kind of containment facility, and that Superman is also inside of it. Now, this could be a containment facility owned by Lex, or I'm going to throw out a different theory here. We kind of see these cubes and cages around him with other people inside of them. So this reminds me of Brainiac. Now, if you're going to list like Superman's top villains, everyone's going to say Lex Luthor's first and Brainiac is second. The thing about Brainiac is there's different iterations of him, but recently the most popular one has been that he is a supercomputer who came from Krypton. And he's traveled the universe with a shrinking ray where he is able to shrink down entire cities or animals and take them with him is to kind of form like an intergalactic zoo. But for Brainiac, it's more about having a repository of knowledge. So I think Brainiac might be the big overarching villain of this movie. They have confirmed that Alan Tudyk does play a character in the film, but they haven't said who. So I think he might be voicing Brainiac. This could explain where the giant
Probably.
comes from. It was
That would be cool to see Brainiac in live action, because we've never seen it.
Breaks out of this prison, we see what looks like the sun reflected on the left-hand side of the screen. This makes me think that they're in space and Superman is able to break out because he's been replenished by the yellow sun of the Earth. Then again, the people on the left and right don't look like actual people. They look more like projectors. So this could be some sort of Kryptonian technology showing him images of the Phantom Zone. We just don't know. And honestly, I don't want to know yet. I like that this trailer does not give much away about the movie, but
yeah, it doesn't tell you anything. It just shows you the characters that'll be there, and you know, stuff like that.
It's always been ravaged by war, and it first
I like that.
all the way back in Superman issue 2, like in the 1930s. I think this is Baravia because later we see it, the country mentioned on a news ticker and a headline with people who look like this. So we see this kid raising a flag, which very much calls to the imagery of the death of Superman. Now, that was a storyline from the early 1990s where the writers killed Superman off for a few issues, brought him back. It was actually like a gateway drug for a lot of people into comic books, especially Superman comics. And the most famous image from that story was this, of Superman's cape flying like a flag after he'd been killed by Doomsday. I also want to mention that another image from that story showed Superman laying dead in the streets of Metropolis. It looks very much like the first image of him that we see in this trailer. And then we see the crowd turning on Superman and throwing stuff at him, just like they do in the comic I mentioned earlier, Superman Birthright. So a big part of that comic is people being scared of Superman and him trying to convince the human race that he is there to help. And I really think that would be a great way to take this movie. You know, to put him in a situation that we've never seen in the films before, where people genuinely are scared of him. Even in the Snyderverse, people embraced him pretty fast. I mean, except for Batman. And then we see him enter Stag Industries. So Stag Industries are from the Metamorpho comics. They're basically like an evil company. Now, throughout this trailer, starting in this scene, we see images of different superheroes who are probably this universe's version of the Justice League. We think that this Justice League is actually working for Stag Industries, and that Stag Industries has loaned out their services to the government, and that they're going to try to apprehend Superman throughout the trailer. Now let's talk about the members of the Justice League that we see in this. So Guy Gardner, seen here, played by Nathan Fillion, old friend of James Gunn, was once Green Lantern, but frankly, he was a big jerk face. He's very arrogant, and he was later replaced by a different Green Lantern. There have been a lot of Green Lanterns in the comics. I do want to shout out, though, that there was a great moment in the Justice League where Batman convinces him to fight him. Says, "Oh, drop your shield or whatever." And when he does, Batman knocks him out with one punch. It's like the seminal Guy Guardian moment from the comics. And then we see straight from Madame Web, Isabella Merced as Hawkgirl, and this is Mr. Terrific. Then we get our first good look at this monster, which looks very Kryptonian. Again, calling back to my theory that it's let loose from Brainiac's ship. However, in classic Super Age comics, Superman also has various animals from Krypton in his Fortress of Solitude. We see this in another great Superman comic book, All-Star Superman, which James Gunn has said is going to be an inspiration for this film. So then we get this interesting moment where Superman and Lois are locking eyes with this weird thing in the background. So the weird thing in the background here, you know, it doesn't really have a defined color, but later on we see that it's green. Again, makes me think this could be related to Brainiac. Brainiac in the comics originally was green, and then in the 80s, they changed his look to look more like a robot. But his ship was like his skull with tentacles and tendrils coming out of the bottom. So again, I think this is telling us that he could be the main villain of this, and that Lex is more like a secondary villain. However, I also want to point out this looks like the Superman villain, the Sun Eater, who, you know, you guessed it, eats sun, and is one of the biggest threats Superman has ever faced. It is weird that Superman is so casual here. It makes me seem like this could actually be a dream sequence, but this is also the very first scene that they showed a photo of to show off the new suit. Another theory our team has here is that maybe Superman and Lois were talking while this was going on outside, and she had an idea of how to stop the Sun Eater, so he was like, hey, wait, say that again, that sort of thing. Also, we do see in this trailer Clark kissing Lois, and also Superman kissing Lois, which very much makes me think that he has revealed his hidden identity to her, or she's figured it out. Because if he's posing as two different men and like making out with her two different times, he is just jerking her around at that point. And finally, one other thing that's going on here. Let's just say that Stag Industries has their version of the Justice League. They're working for the government. We do know that Clark is apprehended by the government at one point. It could be that the government has told Clark, hey, you're not allowed to help. The Justice League has to handle this. So this could be him having a crisis moment where he's wondering, do I actually supersede the wishes of humanity and of the government? Do I step in to help no matter what? Now, here we see Superman crying over what looks like one of his Superbots from All-Star Superman and from like classic Silver Age books. Now, to me, this looks like they're in the Fortress of Solitude. In Superman's Fortress of Solitude, he does have robot helpers from Kryptonian technology who he uses to help maintain his zoo and his other artifacts. Also notice that it has a blue cape, similar to some of the robots that we've seen in the comics. And here we see a shot of, that's the Night King from Game of Thrones. No, it's not the Night King. That is Metamorpho, who, long story short, Metamorpho was an ordinary guy. He was exposed to some gas, and it gave him the power to transform into anything except transform permanently into a human. So he's one of those superheroes, kind of like the Thing, who is always protecting humanity, but outside of it. He is played by Anthony Carrigan, who also played Victor Zsasz in the Gotham TV show. Here we see buildings starting to fall like dominoes, and then a shot
Didn't pick
of
up on
Lex
that.
Luthor. Now, interesting thing here, look, it looks like he is crying. So we might see Lex have an actual emotional arc. Now, in the movies, we've always seen Lex Luthor portrayed as a very one-note individual. He's always someone who just, like, hates Superman for one reason or the other. But actually, Lex Luthor has a lot of depth in the comics. Like, this is a guy who's not only the smartest person on Earth, but people have always ostracized him because of how smart he is. He's somebody who's always longed for connection. And in lieu of connection, he was somebody who always tried to prove that he was better than the rest of humanity. This is why he actually doesn't like Superman, because Superman is somebody who doesn't have to work to improve himself, whereas Lex Luthor sees himself as more of a self-made man. In this shot, we see Superman in the Daily Planet pushing against that monster, and then we see Ultraman punching through a wall, and then fighting Superman in the Metropolis Meteor Stadium. Now, this is also important because, you know, Superman is Americana. He's baseball. He's American apple pie. But remember, there was also a baseball scene featured in Superman Returns when Superman stops the jet from crashing in the middle of a Metropolis Meteors game.
And then I like this part where the puppy is saving Superman and his tail is wagging because he's so happy because he's a good boy. Yes, he is. He's a very good boy.
He is a very good boy. And then we see this shot of Mr. Terrific protecting Lois Lane. Now, they're surrounded by these tents that we saw in the teaser trailer, and Mr. Terrific using force fields to protect him and Lois Lane. And it looks to me like they are protecting them from these Lex bots.
What's the next spot?
Well, in the comic books, Lex Luthor has like his own private army. Sometimes they're guys in suits, sometimes they're robots. Now here they're wearing green and purple, just like the classic Lex Luthor armor from the Silver Age Lex Luthor stories, where he would actually try to fight Superman physically. We also think this is taking place in Baravia, just like the refugee scenes that we saw earlier in the trailer. Now those Lex bots I mentioned also appeared in Superman for All Seasons. Now here we see Superman flying away from fire. This is probably the fire the monster sprayed at him earlier. You can also say this is him escaping the hell of DCEU. Well guys, that was another fun Screen Crush video for another perfect day here in the Screen Crush universe. Gosh, I love you guys, I love our fans, and I love my job.
Yeah, it sure is great being us.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that means. That's cool. That is cool. My voice is cracked. Damn. But I'm genuinely excited for this movie. That was a lot of... I couldn't even speak because I was pulling in so much information that he was putting down, because I haven't really read much comic books, to be honest. I read a few of the Spider-Man comics. I have a Deadpool Secret War comic somewhere in my drawer here that I haven't even read yet. But yeah, I haven't read comic books, but I've always been a sucker for a good superhero. And I was unsure at first about this new Superman movie and the fact that they decided to just hit the reboot button, because I kind of liked where it was going, but they handled it poorly, like big companies tend to do. Like, you could have just postponed the Justice League movie easily. You could have done that. That is the issue. A lot of companies, they'll put a trailer out for a movie before they're even 100% sure that the movie will actually be finished and sent out the door. It has happened a few times. Which is why, in my opinion, if I'm ever going to even remotely be a part of a movie or make a movie, I'm not gonna let any, like, trailers or anything go out unless we're certain that the movie is actually gonna get finished and sent out. Because then then we won't be giving people false hope over a movie that will never see the light of day. But I'm gonna go, because I don't got much more to add to this. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, whatever. And bye, I guess.